Hey, welcome to the Farming Banker podcast. This is the third and final podcast, webinar, YouTube video, whatever you want to call it, for the Get Your House in Order. So we've already gone over two. And again, just to recap, I'm trying to get everything in a calendar frame that's for a typical farmer, typical bank, and activities that you can do to help position yourself as a top producer, top business manager, knowing your business. It's getting your house in order and projecting yourself in the right light with your lender. And or potentially projecting yourself in the right light with the new prospective lender. So um, again, this is part three, the third and final part. As a review, we have gone over the first step, which was in August, September timeframe. We need to start thinking about next year's cost of production. Second step of the first part was to, after you figure out the cost of production, to start to putting together a marketing plan, or at least thinking about putting together a marketing plan. Part two of this is after you get done harvesting, you get the machinery put away. It's getting your balance sheet together, getting a debt schedule together, and starting to calculate your ratios. Those are the three steps of part two. And then in part three here, we're going to finish the ratios. Once you've got your income statement all buttoned up and done, and or tax returns, we're going to review the renewal checklist. We're going to fill the state of the farm address out, and we're going to send the lender a lender's questionnaire. So let's just, I guess, dive in and go through this. So I'm going to share my screen one more time here, and I'm going to just go recap these ratios, just because I think they're important. And I'm going to pretend we've got all of our numbers done and everything done here. So we've got our balance sheet figured out. We got our income statement, our taxes are filed, and so we've got the information to put all this together. So again, just like your profit manager, everything that is orange, you fill in, everything else automatically calculates. So in this hypothetical deal, we've got a 116 ratio. So it basically means for every dollar in debt, you generate $1.16 in ability to service that debt. And so, whether or not you want to write a note as to this, I've given you, on these five ratios that every farmer needs to know. It's obviously color coded, but it gives you a chance to write in some notes. Maybe you can put in there and say, hey, we knocked it out of the park with some non-GMO beans. Or we signed up for Climate Smart, and it was one of the best things we did. Whatever the case is, you can write those notes up in this section. Below those notes just give you a high level view of what this ratio is telling you. And again, at any point you want to spend some time with me to go over all this stuff, calculate your stuff, and fill it out. I'm more than happy to. So we just calculated. You got a 116 debt service that turned green. Working capital per acre. We finalized the balance sheet. Got all of our grain inventory accounted for, all of our prepaids, accounts receivables. We filled all that out. Here's where it ended up. And we've got $550 per acre of working capital, which means that if we really need to, we could only have the bank fund about 500,000 of that $1,000 that's being projected in 2025. And so that obviously has turned that ratio green as well. Working capital burn rate, we're projecting a fairly significant, sizable losses here for 2025. So I said we're going to lose $400,000, and that's shown us that, if we were to continue losing $400,000, that I would be out of money and the ability to cover those losses in 2.75 years. So that's what this ratio is telling you, is that under the projected loss, how many years can you live forward? And then the debt to asset ratio just shows the percentage of ownership that your debtors own versus you of your farm. and that's turning yellowish. Turns right around the 50% mark. If you look at this and let's just say, just hypothetically, and this is why these two ratios, your working capital burn rate and your debt to asset looks well, along with debt service. So let's just pick on these three: debt service, working capital burn, and debt to asset. So let's say that debt service, you can't service your debts. Let's say that's a red. Then we're going to, as a bank, look at working capital and say, okay, well, if you can't service the debt and you're showing a loss, how much working capital do you have to live forward? Well, in this case, you're 2 3/4 year forward. If you were down and let's say you had no working capital, okay, let's just say that your projected net loss is 1.5 million, which turned it to red. You didn't have working capital. Now, as a bank, you would say, okay, we need to recapitalize. So let's look at the debt to asset. How much has already been leveraged against your assets, and do I have enough room to be able to plug this, recapitalize this business, and continue to move forward? And so that's why these three ratios are really, really important when you're looking at this. And again, give me a call, shoot me an email. We'll walk through all this stuff together if you need to. And then finally, this debt to equity. How much debt do you have versus equity? Kind of showing your solvency. You're less than one. This is really good. And so you probably want to look at this and say, well, hey, how can I have a green debt to equity, but a yellow leverage ratio? Well, as you know, farm assets, as we saw in the 80s, they can change, they can devalue. So as that starts to creep above 40%, into that 50% range, those are ranges that, banks start to get a little, I'm not going to say nervous, but they certainly start to take a more of a picture as to where is this trending to. So we've got all of our stuff filled out. We're ready to go. The ratios are done. So then we're going to go from here. So this is the step one of part 3, is to finish the 5 ratios that every farmer needs to know. Step 2 of part 3 is to review this renewal checklist. And I've got a new one as well. So if you're going to search for a new bank, I've got a checklist for that as well. Very similar to this. It may just include a couple more things or multiple years of taxes and balance sheets and that kind of stuff, just to help the bank be able to trend you out. But basically, here's what we're putting together in this financing toolkit. And to get your house in order, is that now it's time to tell your story. Okay, we've gotten all your information together, and honestly, just because I've, especially in your marketing plan and your projections, even though I said, hey, start it in August, September, that doesn't mean that you never look at them again. I'm assuming that you've updated them with all of the current year, current information as to where you're marketed at this point in the year, and that your projections are absolute. You've got you pretty much know all of the, prices that you're going to pay for expenses and that type of stuff. So I'm assuming that at this point, this part 3, I'm assuming is going to take place around that, July, January, February timeframe. I think you're going to have an annual meeting with your lender somewhere before March or April. And so then this checklist just helps you get prepared for that loan renewal in that meeting. So as you look through this, I want you to use this as a checklist. And so the second you get your year-end income statement and or tax returns, check that box. You've got that. You've got the year-end balance sheet. Check it. You've got your crop plan and projections. If you're filling out, the profit manager, you can check that. If you're a livestock producer, do the same thing for your livestock plan. Land and equipment list at market value. Check that. Debt schedule. If you filled it out with our plan, you can check that. Crop insurance and declaration page, along with your APH database forms. This is something that I think, I've always really liked seeing, but I think is probably going to get more and more traction, is just to know where's the backstop to some of the losses from a yield and price perspective. based on what you've been doing. So, real quick, I had a gentleman that put together a projection that said he was going to yield 245 bushel acre, I think, on his whole farm. And I requested the crop insurance APH database forms, and his APHs were 180. And so then, or I think it was 189, 190, somewhere in that general range. And so we just had a conversation that was like, why all of a sudden are we really optimistic, and are these projections realistic? So I think that putting that together and using that, what's realistic, but a bank's probably going to verify it. So if you just do it right up front, you're going to establish a lot of goodwill. Marketing plan for crops that you still have on hand and the upcoming growing season. If you're still holding on to 2024 crop, and your marketing, send them both marketing plans, and show them where that's at. State of the farm address, I'm going to show you that in a minute, and then the Lenders Questionnaire, I'm going to show you that as well. So this is a checklist and an outline for you to be able to put your financing package in order, and for you to fill out the state of the farm lender's address. And so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because everybody out in internet land and all that type of stuff, all the airways don't want me to regurgitate this. So I'm just going to hit the highlights of this outline that's in the back of the checklist, and think about this as you start filling out your state of the farm address. And that is, focus on tell your story. Break down, and show supporting data for your land costs, machinery costs, labor costs, the return to management. Talk about the technology that you use on the farm. Talk through what you're doing to increase revenue. Talk through what you're doing to potentially cut cost, expand lines of businesses, enter in new lines of businesses. All of that type of stuff. Focus through and telling your story within this state of the farm address. Additionally, I've got a couple sections within the state of the farm address that talk through operation, capital and replacement needs. And so make sure you outline that. If you've got a purchase that that's coming up, identify that in your state of the farm plan. We did a podcast with Paul Neefer, Chris Barron, and Jared Creed about just the state of the banking, or the state of the economy type deal. Jared made a good point, is that, if you're in a position to purchase land or move machinery, get some of that pre-approved. And us as lenders kind of like doing that too. I do that with some of the people I work with, is that I may have a guidance line out there for them, because I know they're going to move their combine in August. But I'm doing the renewal right now in February. I'm just going to build that in so that by the time that comes, we don't have to go through the whole credit process again. It's already approved. We sign papers, we move on. So, I would identify that, and make sure that you talk through, the stuff in the next 1, 3, and 5 year plans for replacement and expansion. That helps your bank get your ideas around where you're going. I would talk through, where and how you came up with your operational costs. Obviously, a lot of it could point back to your profit manager or something similar. But again, a lot of the times we get feedback that the bank does not want the whole profit manager. What they want is the summary. And so if they give the summary and you're giving them that front page of the profit manager in the summary, make sure you take some time in this state of the farm just to show that, the bank that you've thought through how you arrived at your numbers. And then the following is just make sure, you've got a documented marketing plan within the state of the farm. It just puts some narrative around why you picked some of the target prices you did, things you may be waiting for, things that, you're looking to have done, in the next, few months here to mitigate risk, whatever the case it is. So, make sure you put that together. And then this last page is just a regurgitation of what we just went through, financial ratios you need to know, make sure you fill those out. So that is the checklist. This is your playbook for filling out this state of the farm address. Now, what I would tell you is that, before you go fill out the state of the farm address, I would send this lender's questionnaire to your lender and have them fill this out. So both this lender's questionnaire and the state of the farm, both of these are PDF fillables. And so what I want here is I want you guys to get an idea of what the bank thinks about your farm and what's going on with the bank's business. And so send this ahead of your financing package, send it ahead of your annual meeting, and try to request it back before your annual meeting so that you've got an idea of how to drive discussions. I think sometimes one of the most painful things for both banks and farmers to do is to have a similar every year kind of conversation that says, so tell me about how last year went. So, can we lend you any more money? I mean, it's a waste of everybody's time. So let's start driving dynamic discussions about your business, about the bank, about truly being business partners. So send this out, get it back before the meeting, take a look at it, and let's use it, at that annual meeting. So real quick, questions I'm wanting you to ask your lender. And we did a podcast about this, Chris Barron and I did, but Shay ended up throwing some more at us that actually were really well thought out questions that we had to include in here. So I don't know what the podcast did on 19 minutes. It might have said like 5 questions there, 5 or 6 questions to ask your banker. I know we've got more here now, but you're gonna have to go with it. So question number 1, where does my loan relationship fall within your bank's loan rating system? I think you need to know whether you're a pass, you're moving on the watch list. I think everybody needs to know that. So ask them, and they've got plenty of room to elaborate. What are the things about my operation you're happy with? What are the things about my operation that you would like us to improve? If I wanted to increase the size of my operations, how would the bank feel about that? How's the overall performance and safety and soundness of the bank? What are the biggest challenges that your bank is facing? What are the industries that the bank likes lending to, and which ones are perceived as high risk? This is a great question. Shay, I wish I could take the credit for it, but Shay thought, hey, if there's some natural synergies within the industries that we have in our own business of expansion or profit center, it'd be kind of nice to know that if we want to diversify our income. Or I guess the inverse, if we were thinking about entering into a new line of business and it's already a high risk business for that bank, maybe you need to think twice about that. How does my loan approval process work? Please describe, the different levels of approval based on how much is borrowed. You may know exactly what the process is right now, but if you were to purchase a farm across the street and let's say it caused you to borrow another $1 million, what does that loan approval look like then? Do you have to go through 4 different committees? Is it still the same person that has to sign it? I think you need to know that. And if it's different people, maybe you should invite them out on the farm to get to know you a little bit, because numbers tell you half the story. Next question: who's the backup to you on my relationship? Now, this is probably one of the most important questions, because at the end of the day, we've all been faced with a phone call that says, hey, your lender so-and-so left. I'm the new person on the account. And you got to go through everything again. Or, so-and-so's retiring. Here's the new person. Or you call up at the end of the year and say, oh my gosh, I get a hell of an opportunity. I need to buy the farm across the street. Your banker took a once in a lifetime trip to Europe and is gone for 3 weeks. So find out who this person is and get to know them, invite them out to the farm, have them come with your main lender so that, if you run into those types of situations, you do not have to start at square one. And the other nice thing is that, if you don't jive with who the backup is, maybe it's time to start courting a new bank if and when that day comes. So I love that question. Shay, nice job, buddy. And then the last question here is, why should we bank solely with your bank? What makes you different? What values do you bring? What value do you bring to that the other banks don't? And I think that's a well thought out question. I almost feel like a lot of the times bankers will put you as a farmer on the spot. And to be honest, sometimes it's probably a little bit nice to put the bank on the spot. So make them tell you what they bring to the table. So this is the Lenders Questionnaire. This is part two. Uh, Sorry, technically part three. Because the first part, if you guys remember, we're just going to review. First part was finishing your ratios. Second part was reviewing the checklist. This is the third part, the questionnaire. Send it to your lender. Say, please fill it out. Get it back to me before X date. And then once you've done all that, your last part of this whole get your house in order is to complete your state of the farm address. And so again, this is a fillable PDF. You're going to put your farm name, the owners, you're going to fill this out. I don't need to go through all of this stuff. You're going to fill this out. And this is your cover sheet to your whole financing package. If you send things electronically, I just shoot the email to the banker that says, hey, here's all my stuff for renewal. Can you please go to the state of the farm address before you look at anything else? And just leave it as that. So this would be my suggestion is to, this is your cover page to all of the stuff you send in. So let's just run through this quick. The background, type in, I'm always interested in the things that the numbers don't say. And this is your chance to put the farm's history around what the numbers don't tell you. And I'll give you an example. Dutch Farms, in the 80s, we got out over our skis. And, to solve one of our issues, we ended up getting contracts to grow hay for a couple of the local zoos in Northern Illinois. And that cash flow pulled us out through the 80s. And one of the things that I like about that story is that it shows the tenacity that we had. It showed the ability to think outside the box, and that we were willing to do things to react and save the farm. So, if you've got something similar that's happened, or things that you're proud of, I'd put it in that background. Now, for the updates, for this year, maybe if this is your first time filling it out, maybe you don't have a lot of updates, but maybe in the following year, maybe Grandpa gifted his shares over to you. He's no longer in the farm. You'd put that information here. Maybe Junior came back, from working at, Monsanto, well, technically Bayer now, or something along those lines, and going to be part of the farm. And so, you would put that information there. So updates to your background. Key takeaways for the year. These are all fillable. So you can, year over year, you can keep changing that date. I would put in here, what did you learn this year? Not necessarily just bad stuff, but what was the good stuff too? I mean, maybe you guys really like Y dropping this year and didn't last year. And that, that's a key takeaway. And you saw yields that boosted. I guarantee you there's going to be somebody in credit that's going to say, why are yields so much higher this year? Well, maybe that's one of your key takeaways that the lender can point right to. Key initiatives, what are you looking at doing? Maybe you've expanded to a point where you've got multiple member teams, and you want to have better team meetings, and you want to start delegating and elevating. You want to start putting more responsibility in the hands of some of these people, where you can start focusing on the business from a little higher level and be that visionary. All these different initiatives that you may have put in right there. Here's the capital needs part. We've already talked about this, but this is where you're going to list this out. Capital needs for the next year, challenges that you see for the next year. I would put them out there. You've done your projection, you've done your business ratios, the 5 ratios every farmer needs to know. You've got your marketing plan. There's no reason why you can't start listing out what your challenges are. And then I've got a big box here for, any other information you'd like to share. I'll leave that open for you guys. So then as you look to this next page, this is just a real quick summary. And I'm just going to run this, through here that just says, hey, in this package, this is what's all included. And, just a real quick snapshot. So yes, you got a debt schedule. Maybe you don't do an equipment appraisal. Maybe they already have copies of all that. So no big deal. Yep. You've given them your crop insurance declaration page, and you've got the marketing plan. So you're going to fill this out. I made 100,000. I'm projecting to lose 400. Okay, the percent you got sold, maybe you're only sold 10%, and it's at 4.5. Maybe you've got percent sold for, sorry, this is a year. So this would be 2025, 2024, maybe you're 80% sold. For 2025, maybe you're only 10% sold. Okay, fill that out so they can look at that. These are huge numbers that, we have looking at the banks when they get this, these are kind of pre-renewal discussions that go around the bank. So start putting all that information out there that just says, hey, this is where I'm at. Because I know the bank and the credit department's going, where do you think the farmers are sold at this point? Well, start putting that in there. Working capital per acre, I think we were at 533 or something in that example I gave, and then we had 2.75 year burn rate. So you'd fill that information out, how the projections were determined. This is where you're going to fill out, all this information that highlights the profit manager, and then the strategies that you're using to protect the downside risk. This is you're going to fill out that's the narrative around your marketing plan. You put all that together, and you put all of that with all of the stuff that I just showed you in these different three parts. I guarantee you're going to have a couple things happen. One, the banker's going to trust you a lot more. Two, you're going to have, I'm not going to say a ton of flexibility, but you're probably not going to have the tightest loan structure of all the farmers that work in that bank because they trust you. And then three, whether you want to believe it or not, if they believe that you are a strong farmer with strong business skills and you know your business, it's going to equate to your rate. So, that's just, kind of a couple points of why this exercise is worth it. And you know what? We've tried to make it as simple and easy to fill out as it can be for you. A ton of fillable, forms so that you're not recreating it. So that you can, during your office times of the year, you can get in the office, be productive, and then get back to being the visionary or get back to managing the crew, whatever it is that your role within the farm is. We've made it so that, this has got a lot of power real quick. That takes a little bit of time, but it's not like you got to reinvent the wheel. So you need this package. Get a hold of me. Get a hold of AgD Solutions. It's called the Financing Toolkit. You can visit me at www.farmingbanker.com. Go to all my contact information. Say, hey, I'm interested in the financing toolkit. You can schedule time with me to go through it with you this year, your renewal. Whatever it is you need from me, let me know. I'm happy to help. So thanks. This concludes everything. So I'm a recapper. Last time I'm going to recap this. Part 1, August and September. Get your projections for the following year started. Get your marketing plan started. Part 2, at the end of the year, get your balance sheet done and accurate, reconcile it, make sure it looks good, fill out your debt schedule, and start completing your financial ratios. Part 3, in that January, February time ahead of your renewal, finish your ratios when you got your income statement correct. Send the lender questionnaire out to your lender. Review the renewal checklist. Fill out the state of the farm, and then send that whole package off to your lender for a better, more dynamic discussion at your loan renewal. So any questions, reach out to me. Appreciate the time. Hope this was helpful.